still hurts when I recall the times I've tried. But I'm easy, yeah, I'm easy. Take my hand and pull me down. I won't put up any fight because I'm easy.
Nashville is a film that came out in 1975 that's directed by Robert Altman. So Nashville is actually this month's subscriber poll winner, and it actually won by a pretty fair margin. And that was kind of surprising to me because that was like a last minute pick to be into the poll thanks to Mitchie, one of my longtime subscribers and patrons. By the way, I wanted to apologize for not having any poster art on this side. I just recently put up a Holy Mountain poster, so I mean, that's pretty wicked, right? But Nashville is a film that I've been dying to see for quite some time. I've been really getting into Robert Altman stuff, at least over the past 5 months. Even though I wasn't that huge on The Player, I really loved Three Women, and I also adored Shortcuts. So Robert Altman so far is a filmmaker that I've been really having my eye on. And overall, I've just been really appreciating his work. And going into Nashville, I kind of expecting something that was akin to Shortcuts, just in the sense that this is a near 3-hour film that follows so many different characters. And this film actually follows a lot more characters than Shortcuts, which is kind of crazy to say because Shortcuts follows a lot of different characters. But Nashville follows over 24 different characters. And that's an incredibly ambitious move on Robert Altman. I personally have never seen a film try to establish and cover that many characters in one film. And just to cut right to the chase in regards to my feelings about Nashville, I, to no one's surprise, really like this film. I think that this is a great film. You know what? I'll go as far as to say that I love this film. But I'm going to be completely honest. The first hour and a half of this film, I thought was good, but really nothing that great. It wasn't until the last hour of this film that I felt like I was watching perfection. And that's mainly because the first hour and a half is really trying its best to establish all these characters. As I mentioned, over 24 different characters in this film. And it just feels quite chaotic. It feels a bit aimless. And even though I do think it's capturing this event in this era quite well, it's just, I really couldn't immerse myself into the story. I really couldn't bring myself to care about these characters at all. But even then, I was still able to appreciate this film's ambition. And there's still a nice handful of moments in that hour and a half that I think is just great filmmaking overall. But the reason why I think the last hour of this film is perfection is because it becomes more focused. It basically centers on the handful of characters that I think were actually the most substantial and interesting characters in the film, and crafts a narrative and a conclusion that is not only thought-provoking and sends a powerful message, but at the same time is quite shocking and a bit emotional. It's able to send an honest message about the music industry and also about American politics through one of its central characters, Barbara Jean, which in my opinion, Barbara Jean is the best character in this film and is my personal favorite character that's presented in this film. And it's mostly because of the fact that I feel like Barbara Jean is not only one of the most human characters in this film, but it's also the fact that she represents exactly how talent is treated in America. And it's incredibly tragic. Her character in this film, I mean, is filled with so much soul and personality, but it's just like the powers that be just have so much control over her life, and throughout this entire film are just pulling the strings, and makes it to where her mental state is completely compromised. And there are so many scenes throughout this film that kind of represent that notion, but there's a few scenes, especially in the third act of this film, where you can clearly tell that she is just longing to have a human connection with somebody. and is longing to have a conversation with somebody. And the elite figures, which are the producers, including her husband, which is essentially the manager, they basically just write it off as her being mentally sick. And the final concert that she gives in this film is so heartbreaking because you can tell that she's just an artist that loves the music that she creates and really just wants to share it with people, but you have a bunch of politics getting in the way, a lot of special interests that are pulling the strings, and it just really goes to show you how art and talent is treated as a commodity in America. And that's why I love the conclusion to this film and overall the last hour of it, because you get so many excellent and powerful shots, especially one giant shot of the American flag waving in the wind. And I personally thought that, just considering all the context of what was happening during the moment, was just a profound image. And that's also what I loved about the film, was that throughout its entire film, it basically is trying to express to you the relevance and the influence of politics in art. Because throughout this entire film, there's this van that is always driving by a certain area that's basically blasting a political speech from a certain candidate. And it just goes to show you that politics is an unavoidable aspect of life and is always going to try to express itself in any platform that it can. And in this case, especially art, and also in this case, especially country music. While at the same time kind of foreshadowing this film's climactic conclusion in the final 10 minutes. There's also a journalist / reporter type character in this film that I also really loved. I thought that she was entertaining as hell, and I love the way that journalism is portrayed in this film through her character, because her character is so dramatically bracketed from reality. It's almost like she ripped herself from her own culture and any kind of upbringing that she has, and she views everything from this kind of analytical outside perspective, to where any and all sensitivity is just thrown out the window, and she's just kind of like moving from person to person and kind of leeching for a story in every place that she goes. The way that her character is portrayed is almost as if she's a complete alien to human life, and she's just here just trying to study and understand everything that she comes across. I mean, it gets to a point where she's literally in a junkyard and she's narrating her kind of forced existential thoughts in terms of how she's interpreting this junkyard. And I just think it's kind of ironic because she's in Nashville that's full of all of these rich and interesting cultural things, and yet she ends up failing at her job to the point where she ends up at a junkyard. But one other thing that I really loved about this film is the music. And, you know, that might go without saying for a lot of people, but I can see people who are not really into country music struggling with some aspect to this film. Because there are long sequences in this film of country music artists giving their performance. And I do mean long sequences. I mean, there are sequences that I think go on for 15 or 20 minutes. And I can see somebody who's not into country music really not having a great time with that. But for me, it just really works and added to the experience. One being the fact that I actually do really like good classic country music. I think that good classic country music, when done right, it hits so much different from any other type of music that I hear. It just comes off so human and so wise, and just filled with so much soul that I think really captures the human experience. And I just really loved all of the music that's performed in this film, especially the music that's performed by Barbara Jean's character. It's just, it just hits that emotional sweet spot just right. One other thing that I really liked in terms of what this film has to say about country music as well is that country music, there's almost no in between when it comes to its quality. With country music, it's either really good or just flat out bad. And I think the reason why that is because with country music, you're either singing truly from the heart or you're not. And even if you are singing truly from the heart, you also need to possess a talent to be able to vocalize that truth, or else people are gonna boo you off stage. And that's a whole other theme of this film that I think was expressed really well. And a lot of that has to do with the exploitation of artists, because it shows you both ends of the spectrum. I already expressed to you earlier that Barbara Jean's character is a truly talented artist that basically gets taken advantage of and has no control over her life. But then you have other artists in this film who are absolutely terrible. They basically have no vocal talent whatsoever, but even they are extremely taken advantage of in a really sexually exploitative way that's so humiliating and degrading. But as I mentioned in the beginning of this review, I don't think the first hour and a half or so is really all that great. There are a lot of characters in this film that are either forgettable or really just could have done completely without. I was kind of excited to see Shelley Duvall's character in this film, but she's barely in the movie, and she's so unnecessary to this film's plot or even themes. And there are so many other characters, especially that are trying to be established in the first hour and a half of this film, that I feel like are just holding the film back narratively and thematically, and just made it to where it was really hard for me to get invested. Again, I do like, in terms of the first hour and a half, that it does capture the kind of culture and chaos of this era. But at the end of the day, I unfortunately think that Robert Altman's attempt to be this ambitious and depict over 24 different characters in this film is what unfortunately holds it back, because it isn't until the last hour where, it chooses to only focus on a handful of characters and become more a concise piece of filmmaking to where I felt truly invested and felt a bit moved by this work. So I'm going to give Nashville a soft 8 out of 10. I'd give a lot to love you the way I used to do. Wish I could. Who knows? Maybe upon rewatch, I will love this film even more than I do now and bump that grade up. But as of now, I do feel like this film would have benefited from a more condensed and simpler approach to filmmaking. But either way, that's all I got to say about Nashville. If you really enjoyed what I had to say about the film, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.